So we're coming up on Valentine's Day, and today we're going to put together a beautiful piece of home decor. Could be a nice gift for that special someone in your life, and I'm sure it could be adapted for a wedding even. And of course we get to work with some flowers, which all of you really love. So take a look at what we have here. Now the first thing I want to do before we get started is just kind of go over the layout here so that we understand how everything works. Now, when you cut everything out, I'm going to try to arrange this so you can see it all. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here so that hopefully you can get everything in frame. The flowers, there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 flowers. Okay, and hopefully you can see all these. There's 2 of each color, and can you see all those? Let me move this over here. Okay, yeah, so you got a darker, a medium tone, and then a lighter, okay? These 2 here, the darkest tone, there's one that's bigger than the other. We've got one small one and one large one in the dark tone. Okay, let me move that down so you can see. And you can see the difference here in the size of the bottommost petal. Okay, so, and then these 2, the lightest tone and the lighter tone, these are identical. So these 2 flowers are going to be the same exact size. You'll also notice that on each of these, on the inside here, there's a 1, a 2, a 3. Now the 4 looks like a circle. It's just 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4 next to each other. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 to create like a circle. The one that has a circle with a 1 next to it, that's a 5. The one that has a little circle with a 2 next to it, that's a 6. Okay, so what I did was I just kind of laid these out just to make sure that I have all the correct petals that correspond with that specific flower all together. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For this petal, or for this flower here, there's 2 of these. Okay, so just to kind of illustrate this, this is going to go together to make one flower. Okay, and then this is going to go together to make one flower. Okay, so that's 2 flowers there, right? And then you've got 1 flower here, 1 flower here. And now this one here in the dark color, you'll notice that these are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But what you're going to want to do is either start with the 1 and kind of compare the sizes and take the smaller one and the larger one and separate them. Do the same thing for the 2. Take the smaller one and move it over to the small side, the larger one, move it over to the large side, and so on and so forth until you have them separated. Okay, there's going to be this color here, the darker color, you're going to have 2, there's going to be a set that has the same number on it, except one's going to be bigger, one's going to be smaller. Just organize the smaller ones together and organize the bigger ones together. Then also, what you're going to want to do is kind of organize your stamens. Okay, now this stamen, the smallest one, I have them sorted from smallest to largest. Take the smallest one and keep that with this small flower. This is the smallest flower. You can tell that by the smallest petal here. This is the smallest petal. Okay, now this is the largest petal, or largest flower. So take the largest stamen and keep that with the largest flower. And now finally, over here, let me move this out of the way. And I'm just using either the first or the last petal in the sequence here to kind of decide what's larger and what's smaller. Now let's compare these 2. And I can tell that this medium tone one is the larger of the 2 compared to this light tone one. So I'm going to take the 2 larger stamens that are left over and put those over with the medium tone, and then take these and leave those with the lighter tone ones. Okay, so and you know, honestly, if you kind of mix them up a little bit, you're not really going to be able to tell, but I did want to show you what goes with what, just so that you can be consistent. So with that said, initially we weren't going to ink these, but I did ink them just because I love inking, and I know that at the end of the day, it's really going to make the project look that much better. So I kind of want to show you what I did with the inking. And since there's a lot of petals, now typically what I would do is use my little applicator here. Let me zoom in on this for you. So typically what I would do, and I'm not sure which of these is newer, so just grab both of them. Typically what I would do when I ink is just kind of dab my applicator and just manually by hand kind of rub it like this. But that, with all these petals, becomes quite tedious, and well, we don't all have that much time. So I've got my little applicator here, and what I've done is just kind of using this to do it a little bit quicker. So I just kind of start with a motion like this and just kind of hit the edges of the petals, applying a nice pressure on them. Okay, now this is a darker color on the petals, so the ink isn't showing up as well, but that's fine. We don't want it to be that pronounced. We just kind of want it to add a little bit of interest. If you want them to be darker and you're using like a deep red like this, go with like a purple ink, because that is close to red, but not black. You know, in darker colors like this, you need darker inks for them to show up, but you can see the difference there, and it does give it a nice little hue. Okay, so that's kind of what I did for all the flowers. On the lighter flowers, I just didn't push down as hard, so it didn't apply as much ink to the actual petals. And I'm just kind of going in a circular motion and just kind of just hitting it real quick. And you know what? It turns out really nice. You can see the gradient there, and that's exactly what I was hoping for, just to kind of give it a little extra interest on top of what's going to happen when the light hits it, because of the way that we're going to shape it. So there's really, you know, for a project like this where you have so much going on, it's very unlikely that anybody is going to kind of nitpick and be critical of all these little tiny little details, because there's so much to absorb, and at the end of the day, the idea is to kind of take it all in collectively. So you're just kind of looking at the overall end result, not the you know, the sum of all the parts, not just each individual part. Now, of course, we want to do our best to make every little piece and every little part, you know, beautiful, which we will. And I apologize if that was slightly off screen, but it's kind of just what I did. I just did a nice little circular motion, just kept it right out to the tips, didn't go in too far. Just want those tips to kind of have a little bit of a different hue. And then, so of course we're going to start with the flower assembly, because we can assemble those and let them cure, let the glue set nicely before we get them all adhered to our main structure. So you can kind of see all the little petals there. And this is actually my second go around with the inking on this. I didn't go as hard because I knew I was going to be doing it again, and I just wanted to be able to show you kind of what I'm doing here to achieve this look. And it does help to kind of use your fingers to hold that petal down so that you don't accidentally crease or damage your petal. And just work that ink on there. It's very subtle. You can see the difference there when the light hits it. And that's, you know, that's personal taste though. You know, if you want your petals and the edges of your petals to have a more pronounced sort of line of ink, then, you know, maybe grab your applicator and just go straight off the applicator. But that is going to leave a lot more ink on there, and you can see, I don't know if you can, but it does kind of, you know, make the tips really, really dark. And, you know, hey, if that's what you're looking for and that's what you want, go for it. I just like the subtle gradients. It just makes everything look so soft and delicate. But there comes a time in an application where maybe I don't want that and I want it to be harsher. And then that's when I would employ, or not employ, but yeah, I guess employ a different strategy. Okay, so again, inking is optional. Once we form these and get them all glued together, they are really going to, the light is really going to start playing with them. You're going to get little shadows and highlights, and you'll achieve sort of this inking look naturally without having to do this. But I say the more the merrier. I really like to make these projects as interesting as possible. So just got one more here. I'm just going to hit that a little bit more. There we go. Pretty straightforward. Now at this point, what we can do is, let me put this stuff away real quick, and we'll just start forming our flowers. Well, let's start with any flower. I'm going to start with the largest flower because I think it'll show up better on camera. And you know, it really doesn't matter if you start with the largest one or the smallest one. I think I'm going to start with the smallest one just because there's something special that we're going to do to this that's different than the rest of the petals. So let's just get that out of the way. Now you'll notice that in the center of the flower, there is a score line to help you kind of crease this and bend it up. So that's the first thing we want to do, is bend this petal up. You're going to do that with every single one of these petals for every single flower. We're going to start by bending them up like that. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, especially for the innermost set of petals here. This is the smallest one. It's the innermost. Okay. I'm going to take a dowel. This is a 1/4-inch dowel, I think. Yeah, I think so. It's about a 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to cup each of these petals into my little dowel here, just to kind of make them round. Okay, so you see what's happening there? Kind of rounding the petal. Okay, just like that. Just kind of squeezing it onto the dowel to make it round like that. This first set of petals, what we're going to do is we're going to bring them in like this, so that they're overlapping quite a bit to kind of create the center bud portion of the rose. Okay, so what you want to do is just kind of squish it together until it kind of looks like a rose, well, the center part of a rose that just hasn't really bloomed yet. Now, one other thing we can do to make that even more pronounced is find a little thinner dowel and take the ends here, the sides, and curl them in on maybe 2 sides. And I'll show you what that's going to do. So when we pull that in and we cup that in, and actually, you know what, let's do that to all 4 sides. Just one side of each petal, kind of cup it in or roll it in with your dowel. And then when you pull this in, you'll have these little areas that really come in more, like they were just really tightly packed and they're starting to bloom. Okay, and we're going to try to do our best to kind of glue that. Actually, I need that in there, like that. I'm going to do our best to glue that together so that it kind of stays in that position here. Let me zoom in on that for you so you can see that a little bit better. So the best thing to do, you can kind of take a look at this and see where the best place to put glue would be. And it'd be on the section here that we didn't curl on the side. So I'm just going to put just a tiny little dot of glue there and take that and kind of reshape it how we had it, and then hold where that glue was and just give it a squeeze. Okay, and then just kind of scrunch that back together, and I can see that this little area here is where I want to put my next little piece of glue. And just kind of roll that up nice and tight, not too tight, tight enough. And just kind of squeeze that in place like that. Okay, and then You know, you don't really have to glue all 4 sides. You could probably get away with just gluing 3 sides, but it's up to you. As long as it stays nice and formed, that's all that really matters. So now I'm going to put some glue on this little section here. Just a tiny little dot, you don't need a lot. Pop that in, give it a squeeze. Okay, and there we have our little center. So this was number 1. There's a little Roman numeral 1 on this piece. This is number 1. And what we're going to do next is we're going to take number 2 and we're going to fold it up, all 4 sides. I'm going to take my dowel and I'm going to cup this. Now, as you start getting up to the larger petals, you may need a larger dowel so that you don't end up kind of over creasing these. And I'm going to pop that right in there like that. And I think what we're going to do, we are going to go ahead and kind of cup these a little bit too. So the first 2 layers, probably going to want to cup. You don't have to cup this one as much. Maybe cup it a little bit less so that it's still kind of together, but not as much. I don't want it to be too flat in the inside here. So I'm just going to take a tiny little bit of glue here. Take my neighboring piece and just glue that down like that. Okay, kind of like we did with the previous one. Let me grab my smaller dowel. Let's curl one side of it so that it doesn't look so flat in the center. We want to glue these together, but we don't want it to be all flat. We want some dimension on the inside. And you see by curling one side there, it really adds a little more depth to our flower here. You can see that like that. Okay, so I'm going to take and going to put a little bit of glue right here, right along the edge here. I'm going to kind of blot that a little bit and just kind of squeeze that and hold that in place. Let it set. And grab this last little piece here and I'm going to put some glue right about here. Pop that in and just squeeze that while it sets. Okay, and then ultimately all we're going to do is just kind of stack these and connect them all together to create our little rows here. Okay, so we're going to take the number 1 piece, the smallest piece, and we're just going to glue that to the interior. Just putting a little bit of glue on the bottom of number 2 on the inside and taking piece number 1. And there's a little hole in the center of each of those pieces, so try to line that up so you can see right through it. You can see how there's light going through there. I've got those 2 nice and lined up. And if you need to, you can put that down on your table and use a little dowel to kind of push that into place a little bit more for you so it sets a lot quicker. Okay, so there's piece number 2 connected to piece number 1. And now at this point, okay, now we're on to piece number 3. It's got the Roman numeral 3 there in the center. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to curl these. Now this is a 3/8 inch dowel. So as we're moving on up here to the larger petals, I'm using a larger dowel. Okay, and again, I'm going to fold these up at the little score marks there. And let's take a look at how this looks before we decide if we're going to kind of glue this. Now, as we work our way through the 1 through 6 pieces here, we want to kind of, it's going to go from being kind of bunched together to kind of sprawling out more. So here's where we kind of need to decide, well, do we glue these together, or do you think that this will look like a good transitional piece here? And I think what we may want to do here is maybe glue these together a little bit, maybe just a couple of them, just so that it does look a little more bunched together and not completely sprawling out here. So I'm gonna grab my dowel, smaller dowel, and let's see, I'm gonna curl in one side here just a little bit. Okay. And then with these pieces, what you can do too is kind of tweak the tops a little bit and bring them in or curl them out just to kind of make them look more interesting. Give them a little bit of personality, each little piece. Okay, and let's kind of cup these together, cup it in. And again, we want to, on this third layer, we want it to start opening up a little bit more. So let's take this piece, and you can see just about where it needs to be to make it look natural. Okay, so you don't want it cupped too much, because then you're not going to see those petals. You don't want it sprawling out too much, because then it just doesn't look natural. So we want it to just have a nice, steady progression from inside to out, and just kind of eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think I'm just going to go right here, and I'm just going to barely overlap these. Just barely. Okay, I'm just going to hold that down. Let that set. Just barely, ever so slightly, overlap in this third section here. And then for the final three sections, we're not going to need to do this to the roses here. They're going to start kind of sprawling out and blooming and just being free flowing. Okay, and I'm not even going to glue that last piece down. Okay, so let's get our glue onto the little square in the center here and take our first two layers and just place that right in the center. Make sure that you get it lined up. If it's off a little bit, it's not the end of the world. And then we can take a look at the end result and see how that looks. And I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty good. Okay. So onto piece number 4, and we no longer have to glue it to itself here, but we're going to fold them up. Okay, I'm going to take my larger dowel here, and the 4 is basically 4 tick marks in a square or circle pattern. It's actually a square, so that is the number 4. There's 4 marks in a circle. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to grab a smaller dowel, and I am going to curl one of the sides here just a little bit, and then maybe just flare out the tops, maybe bring some of them in, curl some of them out, just make it random. Okay, and let's get our glue here, like that, and just get that nice and centered. Make sure you get it nice and aligned. Anybody can do this. You guys should have no problem doing this. I've seen so many of you do amazing work with that floral arrangement. I think it's behind me. Actually, I think it's in the house. Okay, so I've got piece number 4 glued down, and you can see how that's starting to look. That's looking very nice. You can see that there's a nice natural progression from the center to the outside, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So here's piece number 5, and we're going to fold it up, right, like that, and then we'll take our dowel and just kind of cup each petal right in the center. Okay, take a smaller dowel, and I'm going to curl one side in. Just kind of make it a little more interesting that way. And then I'll take the top here and I'll curl it back. Take the top here, maybe curl it forward, maybe pull that in forward, curl that one back. Just kind of make it random like that. We'll get our glue in the center here onto the little square, and take this guy and just line it up with the little hole there. There we go. And actually line it up so that the petals also offset so that they're not right on top of each other. You can see how I had it before where the petals were on top of each other. Offset them so that they're not fighting for space, so that each little petal can get its moment in the sun there. And then I'm just using a little dowel in the center just to push that down and get it to adhere nicely. Okay, there we go. And that just leaves number 6 here. I'm going to fold that up like so. Grab our dowel and just cup it right in the center. Okay, now once we've got it cupped, I'm going to take these petals and just kind of pull them back so that they're kind of sagging a little bit. Okay. And then we can take and just kind of play with little corners here and just do that. Just playing around like that. Okay. And let's take a look at what that's going to look like. And that looks nice. There we go. All right, so let's throw a little bit of glue right in the center of our flower. Make sure that you're offsetting the petals. So again, they're not fighting for position here. And I'm not getting, it's not matching up with the hole. There it is. Make sure you match it up with that hole. That's just there to help you make sure that you get it nice and centered. And there we go. Okay. And I'll push that down with my dowel. There we go. And then we can kind of finesse things as we go here, just to kind of clean it up and make it look really pretty. But there's one of them. Okay, that looks really nice. And of course we need to finish it off with the little stamen in the center here. So I've got one of my little hibachi skewers, or just a skewer. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the tip of this to kind of wrap this around. Okay, now we're not actually gluing it to the stick, just kind of using the stick as a guide. So what we're gonna do is just throw a very thin line of glue all the way down this piece here, not on the actual little individual stamen pieces, but on this solid strip here, okay? And just literally take it and curl it around itself. Now I know I have a little bit of glue there on the stick, but it won't stick. I'll pull it off before it sets, which is fine. But that's really the idea here, is just to kind of wrap it around itself like that. Okay, and we'll just hold that in place until it fully sets. In the meantime, we can kind of flare this out a little bit like that. Okay, we'll do another one here. I'll be zoomed in a little bit more so you can see it up close a little bit more. Okay, and then all that's left to do is just throw a little bit of glue on the bottom of our stamen here. You might want to coat it a little bit thicker than usual. And I'm just going to drop it right in the center of our rose. Like that. And just give that a moment to set. And there we go. Okay, so that is one flower, and we have to make 6 of them. The process is going to be exactly the same for all of them. It's just that some are just slightly different in size. So not a huge deal. And I believe that, I really believe that, as you make 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, you're going to get better, and your flowers are going to look amazing. But there's one of our roses. So let's do one more. Okay, so I have 5 of my flowers all done here. And I'm going to show you one more because I've kind of, well, the more you do, the better you're going to get at it. So let's kind of get these in order here from smallest to largest. Okay, of course we're going to start with the smallest one. I'm going to grab my dowel and we're going to begin by just cupping the petals by kind of putting the dowel right in the center and then cupping the petal around the dowel. Okay. Now I'm going to take my little skewer here and just take one side and just kind of curl it around the tip of the skewer here. And curl it as much as you can without ripping it, obviously. Okay, just like that. I kind of tore it a little bit there, but that's okay. And just curl that around like that. Okay, now as I was working on the flowers here, I kind of started using my skewer to help me form this. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to place glue on the side that we didn't curl just now. Just a little bit, not a lot, just a tiny little bit. And then take that and tuck it back there. I'm using my skewer here to kind of push down in there because if I get my finger in there, it'll undo that curl. And just kind of hold that in place for a few seconds. And using the skewer actually allows me to get a little more pressure in there that I wouldn't be able to get with my finger without really kind of destroying the curling. Okay, so we'll move on to the next section here. Just a tiny little bit of glue right on the very edge of that petal. Tuck it behind, get your skewer in there, and just push up against where that glue is. You can kind of do it this way or whatever's comfortable in your hand. Okay, and then while you're pushing it there, you can kind of take and curl that petal, that little side there, up against the dowel to kind of bring it in like that. And that just makes it look very natural. Okay, so we'll just put a little more glue on the next little petal here. Tuck it behind and give it a press. And I'm kind of pulling that petal down a little bit. Just that little tip there that we curled initially. There we go. And the last one here. Just a tiny little bit of glue. Don't overdo it, because if you use too much glue, it's going to take longer for it to set. And sometimes when you overdo it with the glue, it just kind of comes undone and leads to a whole slew of problems. Okay, so I'm just taking that and gluing it to the back here. Give that a second to set. And there we go. So that's kind of what we're looking for, that sort of shape there where these little guys in the center are kind of curling in. And we'll let that set and move on to piece number 2. It's got the 2 little Roman numeral 2s there. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to repeat that by cupping the centers. Just like that. I'm going to grab my skewer and I'm going to kind of wrap it around the dowel on one side just to kind of bring it in like that. There we go. Just like that. And again, same thing. Just repeat this process. I'm going to put the glue a little bit lower this time. Grab my skewer and just pop it right behind there. And as we move up the list here from 1 to 6, I'm going to glue. I'm going to kind of let this thing kind of expand a little bit more. You're not going to glue it as tight. Okay, moving right along here. We get our glue on the next little petal here. And tuck that behind. And just give it a little push. And then while you're kind of holding it in place, you can take that little tip there and curl it over the skewer. There we go. And then it really starts to kind of just flow. Once you get the hang of it, the first couple, the rest of them will really start to flow nicely for you. There we go. Just like that. You can see that's going to go in there nicely. And this one here, I'm not gonna make it as tight as the other ones here. Just gonna go just a little bit and just hold that in place for a second and let that set. Okay, that's good enough. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put glue inside of number 2, just a little bit in the center there, and take our number 1 and just pop it right in there, making sure that the little holes in the center of the little square sections of each flower kind of match up so that we know we have it centered. And then what I've been doing is once I get it close, I just put it down on my table, grab a dowel, and just push from the inside. So really get it in there, make sure that it makes good contact with the previous set of petals. And there is the first 2 layers. So we'll put that off to the side for a second, grab layer number 3. It's got the Roman numeral 3 on it. And let's cup those petals. Now this is the last one where we're gonna be kind of gluing it to itself. The others are just gonna be kind of free flowing, so it does get easier as you go here. But let's get those cupped and then take one side here, just kind of curl it in like that. There we go. There we go. All right, now I'm gonna go a little bit lower here on this petal. So before we kind of started up here, we're moving down a little bit lower. Grab my skewer and just make contact there and just hold it in place briefly. Let it set. There we go. And next one here. Fold it over and just give it a good push. I was not patient enough with that first petal and it kind of came undone. So I'm going to go back and fix that. Just tuck that in, give it a push. Just be patient. And the less glue you use, obviously, the sooner it'll kind of dry and allow you to move on to the next little section here. And I also don't want to bore you. So I'm going to sit here and it's kind of like watching paint dry. You're watching glue dry. Okay. So again, this one's not overlapping as much, just a little bit more, because as we go from the inside out to the bottommost petals, we want it to kind of open up. So just use your best judgment on how that should look. Okay. And that last section there. Just going to press that and hold it. And you can wrap that around the dowel there. And there we go. Okay, so let's get our glue inside on the little square and pop that in. Now make sure here at this point that we're starting to offset the petals. If you put it in square with the other ones, they're all going to be kind of on top of each other. We want to kind of rotate it just a tad so that the petals are offset, but still using that little hole in the center as a guide to make sure that we get that nice and centered and aligned. Okay, so there we go. That's looking good. And now what we could do too is kind of take these and flare them out a little bit. You can do that before you glue, you can do it after, doesn't really matter. There we go. Okay, so that's 3 layers. Now we're on to number 4. Now this is where we're going to stop gluing them together. I'm using a 3/8 inch dowel this time to do the cupping. So that's a little bit thicker instead of the 1/4 inch. And I'm still going to take one side and curl it like so. And as I mentioned, you can take the tips here and curl them out or curl them in just to kind of make them a little more interesting and give them some more dimension like that. Okay, there we go. You get your glue right in the center there. Take this, make sure that you're offsetting the petals. Okay, and get it aligned with that center hole there. If it's not completely dead on, it's not a big deal, but do your best to get it as centered as possible, and then use your little dowel to push that into place. Okay, there we go. All right, on to petal number 5. Same thing. Grab your dowel, cup, cup, and curl. Just like that. And then maybe curl that out, curl that in, out or in, it doesn't matter. Just, you know, make it random. Fold these in a bit. Let's get our glue in the center. Again, offsetting the petals so that they're not on top of each other like this. You want to rotate it about 15 degrees or so. Get that nice and centered. Here we go. And push that down. Make sure it's nice and centered. It is. There we go. Okay, last one. And let's cup. And cup. Got to be careful with these larger ones when you cup them because you may tear them. So just be a little more gentle with it. Okay, there we go. And then let's curl one side in a little bit. And then just kind of maybe flare this out. Just gonna flare this one out. Okay. There we go, bring those in, fold them up. Get your glue in the center there, and then take the rest of the flower, again making sure that you're offsetting it, rotating it a little bit so the petals are not competing with one another. Okay, and that looks pretty centered to me. I'll grab my dowel, just pop it right in the center, give it a press, get that to stick nicely. Okay, and there is our beautiful rose. Okay, and that just leaves our stamen. And again, mine is gold foil, so it's white on one side. I want whatever side you want to be exposed is the side that you want to put the glue on. Okay, so I'm going to put glue on this section here. I know that seems counterintuitive right now, but you'll see why. And then I'm going to take my little skewer here and kind of use that to get this wrapped nice and tightly around the tip of my skewer. So just kind of roll it and wrap it onto itself. That's why we got the glue there, so that it kind of sticks to itself. All the way down to the very end. And then once you get there, just kind of hold it nice and tight in your fingers until the glue sets. And I see here why I put you can see how the white is on the outside. Well, when you flare these out, it's going to expose that color or pattern or specialty paper that you have instead of the white, which is why I had to kind of do it backwards. If you're using standard cardstock, obviously it doesn't really matter unless you want a smooth stamen or a textured stamen. If you're using like AC Crafts or American Crafts AC cardstock. And then with my little skewer here, I can actually put that right on the tip and use that, put a little bit of glue on there and kind of use that to pop that in there. Okay, and then use another skewer or something else to hold that down while you pull the skewer out. And there is your flower with a nice glob of glue there. Get that out. There, I'll just kind of rub it in. It's going to look a little glossy when it dries, but that's okay. Mistakes happen. Okay, so those are our flowers here, and the way that this is going to work, again, this is the largest and smallest flower were cut out of the darkest color, okay, and then we've got these are two larger ones, and these get a little bit smaller, so this is kind of how it's going to go around your heart. You're going to have 5 flowers up here, and then you're going to have 1 flower down here. It's going to make up the heart, and that's it for the flowers. So not too bad. Take your time with them. I think this is the funnest part, especially because you get to do it a few times and actually like perfect the process, which is really fun, and I thought they came out really beautiful, actually, and very realistic. So we'll put these off to the side. Now, one other thing too, there's a set of leaves that we're going to put behind the actual flowers here, and you can see that I took my ink pad and I inked this with like a dark green or greenish blue, and then I also ran it through an embossing folder with some swirls just to kind of jazz it up a little bit. And you know what, while we're here, let's just go over which leaves go with what. Okay, so again, the biggest red flower is going to be up at the top, and that flower is going to feature, where is it? Here it is. It's this guy here. Okay, this is the set of leaves that are going to go with this flower here, and it's going to get glued on like this. So we can either do this now or we can do it later when we're putting the final together. But this set of leaves is going to go with this flower. Okay, and then, so you know what, let's just kind of arrange this so that we all understand what's going on here. This one's going to go up here, okay, like that. That's the top flower in the center. And then find the next largest flowers, which are going to be the middle tone ones here, I believe. And these middle toned ones are going to feature just these little guys here. Okay, so that's going to go like that. And then this one is going to face outward like that. Okay, and then the next set of flowers here, they're going to feature this, and you can kind of see the curve of this. Okay, it's kind of just picture the curve of the heart and make sure that you get the correct one on here. So that's going to go like that, and of course this one here is going to go like that, and then finally we have this one here, which is going to go onto our small flower, and that's going to go onto the bottom. Okay, so it's going to be, whoops, yeah, it's going to look like that once everything's said and done. Okay, so we've got our flowers done. As you can see, everything's looking very beautiful up to this point. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to assemble the main structure here. And what we need to find is, and take a look at, is you've got 2 pieces that have the letter L cut into them. Okay, that's a liner. This is kind of like a little internal bone structure for this piece. So we're going to take this one with a nice thick heart with the letter L on it, and then find the 2 strips that have just a 1 or a Roman numeral 1 cut into them. What we're going to do is we're going to use this to create the wall on the inside of the heart, and to do that, we're going to begin by gluing this together and making it one solid strip. So what we want to do is take your glue and put it on this tab here. Make sure you get it right out to the very edge. We want it to be nice and have a nice seam there. And just lay that right next to the other piece, making sure that you've got it nice and lined up. And then when it's pretty much mostly set, you can flip it on top of itself, the 2 pieces, once they're joined, and just make sure that everything looks nice and aligned there. These teeth should match up so that they're right on top of each other without any overlap or without one kind of showing more than the other. And that's a good indication that you've got it nice and lined up. Okay, so that looks pretty darn good. Give that a nice final push there. And then we're just going to do the same thing on this side, just to make this one continuous loop. So get your glue right out to the very edge of that tab. And I'm just going to kind of dab this so that it bonds a lot faster. And you can literally just drop it right on top there. This little tab with the glue, I'm just going to tuck it under and just push that down. It should meet. These two pieces are exactly the same size. And in doing so, everything should lay nice and flat on top of each other. It's almost like you just have one piece now that's sitting right on top of itself. Make sure the alignment is nice and precise. There we go. Okay. So there we go. Now this little bone piece is going to be on the top section. This little piece here is going to be the back part. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we begin working here. Okay, so I glued this with my texture side up. This piece is actually, it's going to go like this. Okay, and we're going to glue this around here. But now what I want to do, I actually want to invert this. So I'm going to grab the two sides with the tabs and just kind of flip it inside out like that. Okay, I know that was kind of weird, but that's what we need to do. Just flip it. I'll show you that again. Just kind of grab it and just flip it. So here's the texture side. When I flip it, let me flip it this way. The texture side is now on the inside. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to flip this over. The texture side is here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start forming this. What I'm going to do is take the tabs and flatten them out. Like that almost looks like a bear trap. Okay, and I'm going to pop that in like so. And the tabs are actually going to get glued to the surface of this piece here. And it's just going to kind of go like this. So we can kind of pop it in there so that it starts taking its shape like that. And you can see that the just the resistance of the paper being folded like that is enough to kind of help it keep its shape. So one of two things, we can either A, start at the bottom point, or B, start at the top point. I don't really think it matters. I'm probably going to start here at the bottom. So what we want to do is we'll flip this over, and let's get the first two tabs on either side, on both sides actually, glued down, and just making sure that this is butting up right, that center point is right where those two pieces meet. So just a dot of glue on each of these. You don't need to worry about putting glue on the entire tab. This is just a structural thing. And fold this down onto this tab here, or onto the actual skeletal structure here, making sure that you've got that nice and centered in the middle there. Okay, and what you can do is you can actually just use your table as leverage and push down here while you kind of push this and make sure that that's nice and centered. And get those tabs glued down. Okay, so I'll show you what that should look like. There you go, just like that. Okay, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to glue the first 4 tabs up here just to get that nice and set. Okay, so let's get our glue. Now these 2 tabs here are going to overlap, and that's totally fine. Don't worry about that. Let's open these up. Just a little dot of glue on all 4 of these. That one was a little too much there. And then fold those over. And again, I'm going to flip this over, making sure those tabs are nice and flat on my surface. And I'm just going to push in. And they're kind of fighting each other right now. There we go. There we go. And if it helps, grab a little skewer to push down right at the tip there. Just make sure you got it nice and centered. Kind of using the skewer to push up against the wall so that it kind of hugs this little skeletal piece that I was just talking about. Okay, there we go. Let's take a look at that. And there we go. Okay, so that's what that should look like. And then the rest of it is just a matter of going around here and getting some glue on these remaining tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can probably do a bunch at a time. Fold them down, put it down on your surface, kind of push this way from the inside, and then push down with your fingers here to help that make contact with those tabs. Here we go. And this one didn't get enough love. Fix that one real quick. Okay, there we go. And grab your next little batch here. You can probably do even more at a time. So just make sure you get enough glue. Don't overdo it. Just like a drop or two is quite enough. More than enough, actually. Fold them over, push it down. Kind of push this way. You can see the direction I'm pushing. I'm kind of accentuating the movement there. You don't have to smack it. And then just push that down. Okay, that looks good. And get the last 4 tabs on this side here. Just like that. And I'm kind of pushing here, pushing this way as I'm pressing down here. There we go. Okay, so you can see what that side looks like. Looks good. And then just wrap it up by gluing these tabs down. So we could probably get a little more courageous here and do more at a time, just to speed this up a little bit. There we go. Put that down on your table. And as I'm pushing this way, pushing down here to help those tabs make contact better. There we go. And we'll do a few more here. Again, don't overdo it on the glue here, because this is where it can go fast if you apply just the right amount of glue. If you overdo it, you're going to be sitting there waiting for all of this glue to set, and you don't need to do that. It's kind of one of those sum of all the parts sort of thing where each little tab is doing tons of work, and we've got a bunch of tabs, and cumulatively, all together, they're very strong. Okay, there we go. And just make sure that all of that has a nice connection. So there you go, okay? So there is the first part of the heart. You can see how the dimensional aspect of it is coming together, okay? Okay, now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take these tabs and we're gonna flip them the opposite way. I'm gonna put the center of the heart together. So just flip, flip, flip. There's quite a few here, it's okay. It won't take long. And we're going to take this piece here and pop it inside to kind of close the hole, and then we'll build the outer wall. Okay, here we go. So that should squeeze in there nicely, and it does, as you can see. And as you may have probably guessed, we're just going to go around here and get this glued down. So pick a side, doesn't really matter where, and get your glue. I'm just going to do a few at a time here. And we'll pop them down. And I can flip this over. And I'm kind of just pushing in from the inside here while pressing down on the inside here. Just making sure that everything's nice and tight. There we go. And you know what, let's go on this side here. Let's get these in place. Just a little dot, 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 dot. I'm going to flip those over. Flip that down on my table. And as I'm pushing in here, pushing down in here. There we go. And then the rest is pretty much self-explanatory. We're just going to go around and put little dots of glue on each of these little tabs. Fold them over. Lay that flat on your surface. And push in while pushing down. There we go. And moving right along, we'll just do the last few tabs on this side here. Dot, 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 and a dot. Fold them over. Make sure that they're tucked under. And I'm going to grab my dowel for this little corner section here. And that looks pretty well aligned. There we go. Okay, and we'll head over here and just get this glued down. Just some dots. And I totally overdid it on this section here. You know, no one's gonna see this part, so if you kind of make a little bit of a mess, don't worry about it. It's all gonna be hidden. Okay, tuck those under. And push from the inside. And one thing I just noticed is that this piece here that I'm using to kind of build the interior, I don't have it texture side up. It doesn't matter though, because we're gonna have a couple pieces that cover that up. So if you accidentally do that, don't worry about it. Doesn't make a difference. All right, so last few little dots here. Fold those over, flip it down onto your surface, push from the outside, push down from the inside. Get those set. And there we go. Okay, so we're halfway there. All right, so the outer strip here, look for all the pieces with the number 2 on it. Now, one of them is going to have this really long little tab here, and that's just so that we can keep things nice and round looking and not have a crease. Okay, and I just took it between my fingers and just kind of trained it a little bit. Now, one thing that I remember from building the interior one, I kind of glued everything with the texture side up, but we want the texture side to be out like this. Okay, so the idea here is that we want to take one of this piece and one of this piece and join them together, and then also do the same thing with these two pieces. So the long tab is going to get connected to the one with the short tab, long tab connected to the short tab, and then we're going to ultimately join them and combine it into one. But this is the best and easiest way to kind of remember how to do this. So I'm also going to take this and just with a dowel, just going to kind of train it and make it round so that when these two pieces connect, they're not really fighting. Okay, we don't want any domestic paper violence. So go ahead and get your glue on this long tab here, but most importantly, let's get that glue right out to the very edge here. I want that to be a nice clean seam, a nice clean connection. Okay, and then take this piece and just line it up right up to the little fold right there. Fold it onto itself. Make sure it's nice and centered. Okay, I'm gonna just press that down. And press down here, because remember we've got a really long tab here. We want to make sure that that gets a nice solid connection. And let's see here. Yeah, and when it's sitting on top of itself like this, the little teeth should be right on top of each other, and that indicates that you've got it nice and aligned. Now I've got this little piece kind of hanging out here. I'm just going to take a little bit of glue and just paint the very edge of that so that it sits nice and flush here. Okay. No one's going to see this, so it really probably doesn't matter, but I just like to kind of keep things nice and crisp and consistent. Okay, so that's side one. Now we're going to do the same thing with this guy here. So let's just kind of train this a little bit. And I'm training the side that's opposite of the tab, because that's where this is going to get glued. And again, let's get our glue down to the bottom here, a little bit in the center, but most importantly, let's make sure that we have a nice, clean seam here at the top, and that you get it right up to the very edge. Okay. And just connect those two pieces right up to where that little crease is, or the tab begins. I'm just going to fold it onto itself. Just makes life easier for me. And just make sure that it's nice and aligned. Okay, now we're going to join this together. So on either side of this strip, we've got this smaller tab here, and we're going to connect that to this side here that doesn't have a tab. So get your glue onto the tab, and then of course a nice thin line right up to the very edge. And let's connect those two pieces together. And let me fold that onto itself to help me ensure that I've got it nice and aligned. Try to get as precise as we can. These are all these little variables that come into play and make things not so perfect if we're a tiny bit off. Okay, there we go. And that just leaves connecting these two sides together. Okay, so let's fold that tab there. And let's get our glue right up to the very edge as well. Kind of spread that out. Maybe just dab it a little bit in case you got too much on there. And just connect them together. Make it one solid strip. And you can see how that lines up nicely right on top of itself. And just press. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so the center part all in place now, and we're going to take this strip and pop it in here, just like so. So we've got the teeth folded on one side. We've got the texture side on the outside this time. And we're just going to pop this in here. And now you want to take a look at, this is where the shorter tabs are. The smaller tabs, remember the larger tabs here, the ones that are kind of extended that we trained are on the sides, and then the short tab here is at the bottom as well. So what we're going to do, the most important thing here is to get this piece here, and what you want to do is kind of pinch it between your fingers here, and we're really going to need to just shove that into that crevice as far as we can and make it as tight as possible. So let's open this up and let's get our glue on the first 4 tabs, 2 on each side of the center there where the tab is. Let's take this, pinch it, and just pop it in there as far as it'll go. Give it a little extra pressure and push down. Make sure that it's really, really, really in there as far as it'll go into that little crevice. Okay, and just hold that down. Make sure that that sticks nicely. This is going to be one of the most important things you can do here to make sure that this works properly. Okay, let's take a look at that. And there we go. Just want that to be as in there as possible, okay? So moving on here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work our way down towards the bottom, okay? Because this part up here is probably more important than down at the tip, okay? So let's just get this all, start gluing this down, and we'll just do a few tabs at a time. Just dot, 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 dot. And tuck that under. You can see here I'm just tucking these tabs underneath, and try to keep this up against this wall as seamlessly as possible, and just work that curve there. Okay. There we go. Great. And next set of tabs here. Ooh, way too much glue on that one there. Just gonna dab that, thin it out, maybe pop it on some of these other tabs. Can't take this right now. Okay. And pop that under. Press that down, and there we go. Now we're gonna hit a little point here where we've had that little tab, and you just have to make sure that you just continue it along like we did these tabs here. You just want to make sure that you're hugging that curve nicely and accurately. Okay, so pop those underneath and push here. And just run your finger along the edge there. And there we go. And looks like it's matching up pretty nicely. Now we're going to switch to the other side real quick here at this point. So when you're about to this point here, I'd say about a third of the way, we're going to switch to the other side, and we'll get these tabs glued down now. What we're trying to do is not overdo and do too much on one side, because we're ultimately trying to make sure that when we get to the tip that it's as equal as it can be as far as the alignment goes. There's a lot of variables in working with round shapes like this. So what we're doing is just trying to make sure that try to kind of work symmetrically too, because some of the variables include, for one, the way that your machine cuts, and then there's also, you know, if it's off by just a centimeter, the machine, things can kind of go askew, and then if you glue the tabs and you're off by just a millimeter, it can kind of throw things off. So we're kind of compensating, because this is round, for any imperfections caused by either us or the machine. And we're just kind of doing our best here. Okay, so next set of tabs, tab, tab, dot, dot, dot. Fold that over. Okay, and make sure that those tabs are tucked under. Just makes it a lot easier. And again, follow that curve. Make sure that it's nice and flush there. Okay, and moving right along. Okay, again, pushing along the wall here and pushing this down, making sure it makes good contact, and you can see how nicely this is all going to meet. Now the tip may not glue down perfectly, there might be a little bit of a gap, but that's fine as long as as long as it sits and is nice and symmetrical on both sides, the end result will be fine. Now keep in mind that this is just a little liner piece to help us with the structural integrity, and it doesn't need to be perfect, but we do want to keep it symmetrical. Okay, so there we go. Just glue that down now, and that is looking sharp. That is looking perfect. Okay, so we got that down. Let's head over to this side here, and let's get these little tabs down. And again, just pushing from the outside in, and pushing this down. And now we can close this up on the bottom here. Dot, 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 dot. Tuck those in. Flip it over. And again, it's just a matter of symmetry. That tip here may not extend all the way to the tip of that, but that's fine as long as it's nice and symmetrical. You may have a tiny little gap there, but that is normal. There we go. Okay, so that looks beautiful. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this liner, and this one has a little L cut into it right here. You may not be able to see it, but the little L is right there. And that's going to go in there. See how nicely that fits. Okay, and we're going to push these tabs over. Okay, so we have the face on, or the actual liner for the face. And now we've got our little smaller liner. I just popped it inside here underneath all of the teeth. And we're going to glue this in place, sort of like we did the other side. But we're going to start with these 4 tabs here and just make sure that the little crevice here is properly aligned and connected correctly. So let's get glue on the 4 tabs here. 2 tabs on either side of the little center there. And again, this is pretty important that we try to pop this and get this into that crack as closely and as accurately as possible. So fold these tabs down, maybe just grab these 2, and as you're kind of pushing down towards you, push the tabs down as well to get that sandwiched in there. And then grab the next 2 and just make sure that they're nice and flush against the wall here. And I would probably just do one side at a time just to make sure that you're getting it aligned nicely. Just like that. Okay, so that will kind of set the tone for the rest of it. And just have to go around now and glue the rest of these tabs onto this little liner piece. And we're going to do it kind of the same way we did the face, where we'll kind of work our way down here, one side at a time, so that we keep things kind of symmetrical. So just get some glue on the next set of tabs here. Dot, 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 dot. Okay, and then just make sure that's nudged up against the wall there as accurately as possible. Do the next one. And the next one. Okay, just like that. And still got 2 more tabs here. There we go. Just like that. Okay. And then we can scoot on over to the other side here and get some glue on these tabs. Just a little dot. Just like that. And pop that in. I kind of feel like it's easier just to
push with this finger while you're pushing down with your thumb, and then using this thumb to kind of make sure that it's up against that wall there, up against the liner, like that. And I've got two more. This one didn't stick completely. Just be patient. There we go. And this one's giving me a hard time. Oh, geez. My glue bottle is a little out of control today. Here we go. Okay. And let's just kind of check our work here. And I'm just gonna kind of get a visual as to how this is progressing. And that's good. It looks good. Okay, so I can shimmy on over to the other side here and get the next set of tabs glued into place. Dot, 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 dot. There's 5. And I'm pushing up against that wall, but not overexerting the pressure, just light. Just making sure that it's hugging the natural curve of this little liner piece. I've got one more here, just like that. And then shimmy on over here. And dot, 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 dot. Dab. And there we go. Okay, moving on back to this side here. And dot, 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 dot. Just kind of doing 5 at a time here. Oh, wait a minute. I missed 2 of them. Whoops, my bad. Looks like I'm doing 7 this time. That's fine. Okay. Just get everything connected. Now here, where this little tab is, where the long strips kind of connected, you might have to give it a little extra force just to make sure that it's up against that wall nicely. You can kind of peek in from the inside also, just to make sure that it's hugging this piece nice and accurate. Okay, and just kind of checking my work. It looks like the point is meeting up nicely at the bottom, so that's perfect. And let's shimmy on over here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Got one more here. Okay. All right, and I'm just going to do a few more on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you get a little bit of glue that squirts out, it's totally fine because this is going to be all covered up. We're going to put the back on this just to close it up, make it a nice solid piece. It's going to kind of make it more sturdy as well. Need one more little dot of glue there. There we go. And the last one here. Perfect. It's looking good. All right, let's swap sides here. And dot, 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 dot. There we go. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful and beautiful. And the next one, dot, 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 dot. Dab, dab, dab. And push and squeeze, push and squeeze. I feel like, what's the guy's name? Simmons something, the workout guy. Push and squeeze. There we go. All right, coming back here on this side. And a dot, 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 dot. And push and squeeze. Push and squeeze. You get the idea. If you feel comfortable with this, obviously you can skip ahead. You just don't want to skip anything. There we go, beautiful. And that just leaves a few more on this side and then the last two on the other side. So let's do that, that, that. And let's leave the last two on each side for the last step here. There we go. There we go, and it should pretty much meet right in the center. If it's a tiny bit off, it's not the end of the world. Don't even worry about it. It's all going to be covered up anyway. Okay, so the last 4 tabs, get those nice and aligned. I'm going to do one on each side. So I'll do this side, and then I'll do this side, and then I can do this side, and finish it off with this side. And it's pretty darn perfect. As close to perfect as it can get when it comes to paper. So, beautifully done on the structural assembly. Very happy with the end result here. And all that's left to do now is put our front or our back on. This is our back. Let me get rid of these real quick. We don't need these. This is our back piece. Okay, so you see how that's going to work. And that fits on there beautifully. Okay. And then our front piece, what you'll notice about the front piece is that it overlaps the outside a little bit. Okay, the inside is going to be nice and perfectly flush for the most part. It may overlap a tiny bit, but the outside is going to overlap by about 1/8 of an inch. And we kind of did that on purpose, just in case there were any issues with the assembly. And we wanted to hide some of those imperfections because working with round shapes like this is sometimes, well, it's challenging. So we wanted to make the end result as clean as possible. Let's do a practice run on the back here. Okay, and you know, sometimes when you're dealing with a large piece like this, well, it's kind of hard to get it all down in one shot. We're going to try it, and if it doesn't work, we're going to use the little method where we kind of paint it. So what I want to do is, well, I'm just going to focus on the very edge here, and I'm going to be very precise with this. And I'm putting a kind of a thick line of glue on here, but I am going to spread it out thin, so we don't need to worry about how thick this line of glue is. This will buy us some time so it doesn't start to set right away. But we are going to try to kind of get it all down in one shot. It's a large area, so don't feel bad if you don't get it, because we can always go back in and fix it up a bit. Okay, so I'm just going to take my finger and just run it across the very edge here. And if you pick up a little excess glue on your finger, that's totally fine. That's expected. And just wipe off any excess that you might get. And just spread that nice and thin onto the tabs here. Try to keep your finger kind of clean as you go. Okay, and let's grab our back and let's pop it on and just kind of use the use the bottom corner and then the middle corner as kind of a guide. And I just put my arm in a bunch of glue. Whoops. Get it nice and centered. There we go. And run your finger along the perimeter, just like that. And sometimes you may have to kind of nudge the edges in a little bit because of the nature of the paper, and that's totally fine. Okay, and again, if you don't get it perfectly on there all the way around the first time, don't even worry about it. We'll go in and touch it up with some of the painting technique there. I can already tell my top is not looking as good as my bottom, and that's totally fine. Okay, so you can see that seam looks pretty darn good. There's a tiny little area here that's sticking up. I'm just gonna put a tiny little bit of glue on the tip of this. And if you have like an X-Acto, you can kind of pop it under there and lift it up ever so slightly and just paint a little bit of glue into that little crevice, and then just press and hold that down to get that to look nice and seamless. And then you can see how nice and seamless that is. And I have an area up here. You can see that giant gap there, and that's no problem. I told you this would happen. Like I said, it's just a lot of real estate to cover here. And we'll just throw some glue underneath there. Just paint some glue on there. Wipe off any excess and just push that down and hold it in place to finish off that seam. And this is the back, so no one's really going to see this. And we're actually going to put a little hanger on the back of this as well, so it's going to cover that part up. But hey, we're trying to make it as pretty as possible all the way around because we care about our quality of work. Okay, just kind of cleaning up that little edge there, and the rest of it looks pretty darn good. And again, it's the back, so I'm not overly concerned about it. But that looks pretty darn good, actually. I'm very happy with that. And while we're back there, let's take our little hanger piece, and it's two pieces that we're going to glue on top of each other just to kind of increase its longevity. And just glue that down onto itself. Make sure that you've got it nicely aligned. And just press that down. And then we've got a nice little overlay panel. It's going to go right on there like that. Okay, so let's get some glue on the back of this guy. Like so. Get that nice and centered on this piece. You should have a nice even border going all the way around on the inside and the outside. There we go. Okay, now you can see here, we've got the shape of the heart right here. Okay, so how this is going to work is we're going to glue this right here so it matches that shape, like so. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this entire piece here towards the bottom, and maybe a little bit here in this area here. I don't know that it's going to actually hit it because it's kind of raised, but just get that lined up with the shape of the heart. Sounds like a Sting song. Okay, just put that down like that, and that's how it should look from the front. That's just the shape of my heart. It's a good song. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna let that set. Now, I've got our front panel, the face as I'll call it. And again, kind of get it lined up. Make sure that it's nice and aligned before, just kind of get a visual for where it's going to go. It's going to sit kind of like that. Okay, you can see how it's got a little bit of a lip, and that's totally normal. It's by design. just to kind of hide any possible imperfections that you may have come across during the assembly. And then we got this piece that's going to go on here. And man, we're pretty much there, guys. So again, this is this part here is where we just need to take our time. We've got a large area to cover, and we want to try to get it as flush and accurate as possible. So get that line of glue right along the inside here. This part is going to be pretty much lined up. It may overlap just a tiny little bit in some places. Probably shouldn't, but it might. And then this part, it's okay if we get a little sloppy here, but let's try not to, because this part is going to overlap. The face that we're going to put on is going to go over this about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so there's that, and I am going to just kind of spread that out nice and thin. Clean my fingers off here. There we go. Get it right out to the edge. Beautiful. And this part here, that doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. Okay, and again, use the inside as a guide, because that's supposed to be pretty much flush with the inner part of our face here. And then the outside is going to have a little bit of a lip. So let's just focus on getting that nice and lined up. And try to get it as seamless as you possibly can. And then you can work the outside. And again, if we need to, we can always go back in and paint some of that glue in any of the areas that might need a little extra love. But that looks really nice. And I'm just going to take a look at my perimeter here. And if you've got any areas that are kind of sticking up, again, just take a little bit of glue on a scrap piece of paper and just pop it under there, or just pop it onto the surface here. And just press that down and hold it in those areas that need it. Pretty straightforward. Okay, and you know what? That turned out pretty nice, actually. I just have maybe a few little areas up here that need a little bit of extra love. Just giving my heart a little extra love. Just like that. And then push that down right onto the surface of the actual structure. And man, this is coming together nicely, actually. Very impressed and happy with the way this was designed and engineered. Kudos to the amazing dream team, Mr. Ron and Diana. Ron for his amazing design, and Diana for this beautiful engineering job. Makes all of us look like pros. Okay, so, oh yeah, that looks great. Yeah, except for the bottom there. That's kind of peeling back a bit, but we'll clean it up. You know, the aim is to get as much of it as we can down. It's a lot of area. And if we can't, just go in and clean it up by giving it a little extra love. There we go. Perfect. Perfect little heart-shaped box. very happy with that. Okay, so now it's just a matter of putting our little panels in. This little heart is going to go right inside here. Okay, I didn't even have to actually glue that. That just kind of stuck in there, but I am going to glue it, which means that I got to pop this thing out again. I don't know why I keep doing that. Well, I'm just silly. So get your glue on this piece here. Okay, and let's pop that into the hole here. And just press that down. There we go. And we've got this little accent piece that's going to go in the center. So let's get our glue on this guy. Just be very sparse with this. This is a very thin piece. Doesn't need that much. And then just get a little bit on the inside just to make sure that you don't have any little areas pulling up. That's good enough. And just do your best to get that centered. I suppose you could have done this before it was in the center of the heart, but either way, whatever works. There we go. And press that down. Okay. There we go. And that just leaves this little overlay. Now this overlay is going to be pretty much flush with the interior of the heart. And then there's going to be a little bit of a red border going around on the outside. So let's get our glue. Let me clean this nozzle off. It's getting kind of crazy. Get our glue on here. Whoops. And that is going nuts. I'm going to have to spread that a little thin. I really caked it on there. Let's just use this. Kind of thin that out. Okay. And again, use the inside. It should be nice and flush with the inside, the inner part of our heart here. And then it's going to be, there's going to be a nice little border, a red, a little bit of the red is going to show through on the outside. And just lay that flat onto this surface. And I may need to go in and add a little extra love to the little scallops here because I may not have gotten my glue out to the very edges there. And that's okay. I'll just take a little glue, just spread it onto, that was a little too much. Go a little thinner than that, just like that. Can lift these up, just gently. If you need to get a little help from your X-Acto, just paint that right under there. And press that down. Get that to stick nicely. Okay, I've got three little sections here that need a little extra love. And I'm just going to do that real quick. Make sure that the bottom of this is clean. And press that down. Okay. And I'm just going to wrap that up there. And so there's your heart. And then, that could be a project in itself, but of course we've got the beautiful 3D flowers to add to it. And that's really just going to take it over the top. So let's get a little more glue here on this strip. And just kind of paint that underneath. Push that down. And all right, so anyway, just finish this up and then we can go ahead and start putting our flowers down. Okay, it's time to put our leaves onto the flowers and then just get our flowers in place. So remember, this leaf here is going to go on the back of this this flower here, the small one. This is the deep red color, the dark red. Okay, so let's get our glue on here. We'll just glue these on. And I'm gonna try to find what I think looks good as far as getting it centered. That looks about right. And then another thing we can do here is grab our dowel and maybe just kind of curl some of these leaves so that they're not so flat. Just kind of give them a little bit of oomph. Maybe curl some of them back, curl some of them up. Now I embossed this, so I got to be careful with my curling on that. But that is going to go there. We're going to let that set for a minute and get the other flowers on here. Now again, we've got the largest flower in the center, and then it's slightly smaller, and then really small. So just make sure you get the right one. The deep red here is the large one. The middle hue is second largest, and then these are the smaller ones, and then this one's the smallest. Now this one here is going to use this leaf here. Okay, so we've got one pointing down, and we've got two kind of pointing up and away like that. So we're going to do it like this. So let's get our glue in the center of this guy here and kind of find the most symmetrical vantage point for your flower and get that nice and centered onto your leaf. And if possible, give that leaf a little bit of a curl in either direction so it's not so flat. Again, this is a little harder for me to do right now because of the embossing. The embossing really kind of stresses the paper out and may not be the best idea. So let that one set. Now these two here, okay, these two here, the middle colors here, we've got these leaves. One's pointing out that way, one's pointing out that way. Just make sure that this one's going to be on the right. So let's get our glue right smack dab in the center there and find a nice balance for that. That looks good. Actually, this one's going to be coming in this way, so this one's just going to go on the other side. We're going to flip-flop it. My bad. And I get this one on here. Oh no, I was right. It does go that way. Okay, let that set. And then grab the smallies here. And again, the small ones are going to kind of, the leaf's going to kind of hug. You can see how it's kind of curved in this way. So you don't want it going out. You want it kind of curving in. So let's get our glue onto this little circle here and get that set. Nice and centered. There we go. And our final one here. Get our glue in the middle and get that nice and centered. That looks nice. And again, I'm not going to curl these too much. If you didn't emboss your leaves, you can probably add a little more curl to these. I don't want to stress this paper out anymore because the embossing really took a toll on it. But we can kind of curl it a little bit just to give it a little bit of added interest. Okay. And then it's just a matter of placing these and getting them glued down. You can either hot glue them. I think in my case, in case I want to move things around, I'm just going to use a pop dot and get that. This one's going to be nice and centered. You want the two leaves at the top kind of pointing up like that. Okay, try not to cover too much of this work in here. Get that nice and centered. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then the next set of leaves here. And kind of actually, I'm sorry, got the wrong one here. Okay, so this one's going to go right about here. So grab my little pop dot. And I'm going to curl this back. Okay, let's throw a little pop dot on there. It's just going to give it a little extra dimension. You don't have to do that. You can just use hot glue if you want. That's up to you. And you kind of want to overlap them a little bit. You don't want them competing too much, but overlap them just a tiny little bit. And kind of like that. Okay, grab our other one with a single leaf on it. And let's get a little pop dot on here. Oops, my leaf just came off. I'm gonna fix that. Having all kinds of problems today. Okay, so my leaf fell off of this one. I'm gonna just let it dry for a second before I move on to it. So I'm gonna grab this one here, and let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna grab this one here actually, and that is gonna go like that. Okay, so we've got the nice, pretty little leaves there. I'm gonna throw my little pop dot on here. Okay, oops, and just get that arranged right about there. There we go. You know, I just realized when I was looking at this from a distance, just sitting on the table, if you have 3 little candles, the electronic kinds, you can kind of use this as a little table tray and put little candles on it. That might look really cool. All right, may as well just do our little bottom one here. And the leaves here, you can see there's one leaf that's kind of centered on the bottom. That's going to hang down like that. So we want to get that nice and centered. And grab a little pop dot, throw that on there. So that singular little leaf that's hanging out the bottom, you want that hanging down like that. Just pop that right on there. Look at that. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. All right, back to this guy who is hopefully finally dry. I bet he's not, just because it wants to be a pain in my butt. There we go. Okay, so this guy, just trying to make things nice and symmetrical here. So just kind of use your eagle eye and get that nice and symmetrical. Pop it right on there. There we go. That's actually, could probably go up a little higher. Right about there. And that just leaves this pretty little thing here. And I'm gonna put a little pop dot on it. And finish this off with this little piece here. Right about there. And voila. Okay, and I'm going to try to flare these little leaves out a tiny bit just to give them a little life. They look very flat right there, and I kind of bring them to life a little bit. And that, my friends, my crafty, beautiful friends, that is our project. And I think that looks beautiful. So there it is, all done. I've got a little element here so that you can hang this on a wall. If you wanted to, you could technically cut out a picture of you and your special someone and pop that right in the center instead of the little design. to really add a custom feel to it. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the project, and I hope you guys enjoyed making the flowers with me as well. If you make this, please take a moment and share it with us. Take a picture and visit us in the official group on Facebook. Just do a search for Dreaming Tree Group on Facebook and join myself. And I think we're at 93 or 9,400 other dreamers on top of the 40,000 that we have on our Facebook page, which we just hit. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That lets me know that you love what we're doing. So I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.